When we think about our food, we usually picture a pretty straight line, from the farm to our table. But that's not really how it works. The whole system is run by these invisible rules and, well, hidden players. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on one of the most important rules you've probably never even heard of. A rule that's quietly working to keep your food safe.
So think about something you ate today. You definitely know the brand on the box, right? But do you know where the actual ingredients came from? Like the wheat in your cereal or the tomatoes in your sauce? Who really made them? Well, the answer is way more complicated than you might think.
And that's because a lot of the time, manufacturers aren't buying their ingredients directly from the source. Nope, they go through a middleman, an agent, or a broker. Now, this is a totally normal, super common practice, but it creates this gap in the supply chain, this little blind spot that can actually hide some pretty serious risks.
Let's just call it what it is, the middleman mystery. And it's a puzzle that food safety folks have to solve literally every single day to make sure our food supplies stays secure.
Okay, so here's the key thing to wrap your head around. Your favorite brand, the one you trust, they might be buying their most important ingredients from a company that didn't actually grow or produce them. They're buying from an agent who got them from somewhere else. This isn't automatically a bad thing, but it for sure introduces a huge challenge.
And that challenge has a name, the traceability problem. It's simple, really. When you don't know the ultimate origin of your ingredients, you just can't trace them. And if you can't trace them, you absolutely cannot control them.
And this right here, this is where things get dangerous. When that chain of information is broken, a whole bunch of risks pop up. How can a company be 100% sure an ingredient is safe? How do they know it's the real deal and not a fake? And what about protecting it from being tampered with on purpose? The entire supply chain becomes vulnerable at this single broken link.
Now, this problem gets even more complicated because of something called consolidation. Just picture a giant silo, okay? And into that silo goes grain from 10, maybe 20 different farms, all mixed together into one huge batch. It's super efficient, sure, but it's a total traceability nightmare. The original sources are literally blended together.
And yeah, look at this. Once those different grains are all mixed up, you can't just take out a scoop and say, oh, this bit came from farm A. It's impossible. You know all the farms contributed, but that direct one-to-one link, it's gone. And this is exactly why a really strong rule is needed.
So how do you fix a traceability mess like that? Well, to fight this problem, the food industry has a really powerful regulation. You can think of it as the Know Your Source rule. The rule itself is simple, but it's incredibly effective. It basically says that even if you buy from a middleman, you are still required to know the identity of the last place that handled that raw material, whether they made it, packed it, or were the ones who mixed it all together. That blind spot, it's just not allowed anymore.
And this isn't just some friendly suggestion either. It is a formal requirement. It's officially known as Clause 3.5.1.5 in one of the world's biggest food safety standards. This little clause forces transparency right back into the supply chain.
So why should you care about one little clause? Why is it so important? Well, it's not about bureaucracy or paperwork. It's all about protection and really control.
It all boils down to three absolutely critical jobs. First, it brings back full traceability. It closes that gap we talked about. Second, it means companies can act fast if something goes wrong, like a contamination scare. And third, it forces them to approve the original supplier, not just the middleman. This makes sure every single link in that chain has been properly checked out.
But here's the thing. The rule isn't just rigid. It's also smart. It actually recognizes that some middlemen are doing all this hard work themselves, and it offers a kind of certified shortcut for them. Okay, so here's the difference. If a company buys from a regular, standard agent, that company has to play detective and do all the work to investigate and approve the original source. But if their agent is certified to a really high-level standard, that certification is basically proof that they already have awesome safety systems in place. So in that case, the company just needs to know the source's name. The agent certificate takes care of the rest. It's a huge time saver. And we're not talking about just any old certification here. These are the heavy hitters, globally recognized standards like BRCGS or others that are benchmarked by the Global Food Safety Initiative. You can think of GFSI as the gold standard setters for the entire food industry. This makes sure that Shortcut is both safe and totally reliable. So when you put it all together, this one clause is so much more than just a line of text in some boring rulebook. It's really like a guardian standing watch over your entire supply chain.
It really is an invisible shield. You don't see it when you're grabbing a product off the shelf, but it's always there, working behind the scenes. It's making sure that if a problem ever does pop up, it can be traced right back to the source and fixed fast.
At the end of the day, the whole point is to make sure that crucial safety information never gets lost in translation. It's all about preserving the integrity of the supply chain, which protects both us, the consumers, and the brands we trust, even when that path from the farm to the factory isn't a simple straight line.
So this one rule protects a single, vital link in the chain. And it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other invisible rules and hidden systems are out there, quietly working to make sure everything we use is safe and high quality? What other guardians are on duty that we never, ever see?